Hanna sat in the third row of the classroom, her fingers moving across the holographic screen in front of her. The lecture hall was massive, designed to hold students of all different sizes and shapes. Some sat on regular chairs like hers, others floated in the air. A few needed special platforms because they were too large for normal seats. She had been studying at Galactic Academy Station Alio 7 for almost 2 semesters now. At first, everything seemed strange and frightening. The other students looked nothing like humans. Some had scales, some had feathers. Some didn't even have faces she could recognize. But Hanna had learned to adapt. That was what humans did best after all. Professor Velther stood at the front of the room. He was an insectoid species, tall and thin with 4 arms and compound eyes that seemed to look everywhere at once. His voice clicked and buzzed, translated into different languages by the devices all students wore. Conflict resolution begins with understanding, the professor said, his mandibles moving as he spoke. When 2 parties disagree, violence should always be the last option. Today we will discuss de-escalation, techniques used across different cultures. Hanna took notes carefully. This class was one of her favorites. Advanced combat theory and conflict resolution might sound boring, but it taught her so much about how different species thought and acted. Back on Earth, humans only had to understand other humans. Here, she had to understand 40 different types of thinking. 2 rows ahead of her, she noticed Dayun shifting in his seat. He was a Pyronian, a species that came from a planet covered in volcanoes and lava fields. His skin looked like red and orange scales and heat shimmered around his body. Pyronians were known for having short tempers. Next to Dayun sat Jawan, a Cryosian from an ice world. His body was made of something that looked like blue crystal and frost formed. On the desk wherever he touched, Pyronians and Cryosians had a long history of not getting along. Their home planets had once gone to war over territory disputes. Your people don't understand honor, Dayun said suddenly, his voice cutting through the professor's lecture. Jawan's crystalline body seemed to darken. At least my people think before they act. Pyronians are nothing but heat and rage. Professor Velther stopped talking. His compound eyes focused on the 2 students. Dayun, Jawan, please save your discussion for after class. But Dayun was already standing up. Heat waves rolled off his body, making the air around him shimmer and blur. Say that again, ice creature. Jawan stood as well. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Frost spread across the floor from where he stood. You heard me. Your entire species is too stupid to control themselves. Hanna stopped taking notes. She watched carefully, her body tensing. Around the classroom, other students were backing away. Some looked excited, others looked worried. A few were recording on their devices. That is enough. Professor Velther moved toward the 2 students. His forearms spread wide. Sit down immediately, or I will call security. Dayun didn't sit. Instead, he shoved Jawan hard. The Cryosian stumbled backward, his crystalline body making a sound like breaking ice. The shove triggered something in Jawan, some kind of automatic defense response. His eyes began to glow bright blue. Then chaos erupted. Jawan shot a blast of freezing air at Dayun. The Pyronian responded with a wave of fire. The 2 attacks met in the middle of the classroom and exploded. Students screamed and dove for cover. Professor Velther was thrown backward, his insectoid body hitting the wall hard. More students joined the fight. A massive Granithing student named Kyan tried to separate them, but got caught in the crossfire. A group of skyborn students took to the air, their wings beating frantically. The classroom turned into a war zone in seconds. Hanna remained seated, her eyes moving quickly across the scene. She calculated angles and distances. She watched how each student moved and reacted. Her heart rate stayed calm and steady. Across the room, she saw Minji, a tiny Wisperling student. The Wisperlings were one of the most fragile species in the galaxy. They were small, delicate, and peaceful. Minji was frozen in fear, her large eyes wide with terror. A stray energy blast shot toward Minji. The small alien didn't even see it coming. Hanna moved without thinking. One moment she was in her seat. The next she was across the room, pulling Minji down and out of the way. The energy blast hit the wall behind them, leaving a smoking crater. Minji stared up at Hanna in shock. How did you move so fast? Hanna didn't answer. She was already focused on the main fight. Dian and Jawan were still going at each other, their attacks getting more dangerous. Other students were injured and crying out. Furniture was destroyed. The smell of burning and freezing filled the air. Dian charged at Jawan with incredible speed. His claws extended, glowing red-hot. He was going to kill the Cryosian. Hanna could see it in his movements, in the rage that had taken over his thinking. She made a decision. Hanna stepped between them just as Dian's clawed hand came down. The entire classroom seemed to hold its breath. She caught his hand, just caught it, simple as that. One moment Dian was attacking with all his strength. The next his hand was stopped completely, held in Hanna's grip. The classroom went silent. Even the injured students stopped moaning. Everyone stared. Dian's eyes went wide. He tried to pull his hand free. It didn't move. He tried again, putting all his strength into it. Hanna's hand didn't budge even a little bit. What? Dian's voice came out as a whisper. What are you? Hanna's expression changed. The friendly, quiet student that everyone knew disappeared. Something else looked out through her eyes. Something old and dangerous. Something that had survived when it should have died. Something that had climbed to the top of the food chain on a planet that tried to kill everything that lived there. That's enough, Hanna said quietly. Her voice was soft, but it carried through the entire room. It wasn't a request. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a statement of fact. The fight was over because she said it was over. Behind Dian, Ji-won made a move. His crystalline hand formed into a sharp point aimed at Hanna's back. He was going to stab her while she was distracted. Without turning around, without even looking. Hanna's other hand shot backward and caught Ji-won's wrist. The Cryosian froze, shock replacing anger on his face. Hanna now held both of them. A Pyronian known for incredible strength. A Cryosian known for deadly precision. Both were helpless in her grip. She applied just a little bit of pressure. Both aliens gasped in pain and dropped to their knees. Hanna hadn't even broken a sweat. Her breathing was still calm and steady. Kyung, the massive Granisan who weighed over 400 kilograms, stared in disbelief. Impossible, he whispered. She's restraining both of them at the same time. Sun Woo, a skyborn with enhanced vision that could see tiny details, watched Hanna's muscles. She's not even trying, he said, his voice filled with shock. Look at her. She's not straining at all. The other students began to realize something. Something important. Something that changed everything they thought they knew. Humans weren't weak. Humans weren't fragile. They had been wrong about everything. Professor Veltha recovered and stood up shakily. Security. He called into his communicator. We need security in Lecture Hall 7 immediately. Hanna released both students. They collapsed to the floor gasping and holding their wrists. Already bruises were forming where her fingers had gripped them. Dark marks in the exact shape of a human hand. Dian looked up at her from the floor. His rage was gone, replaced by something else. Fear. Pure primitive fear. What are you? He asked again. What are you? Hanna looked down at him. Then she looked around at all the other students who were staring at her. She saw the fear in their eyes. The confusion. The sudden realization that they had been sitting next to an apex predator and never knew it. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly. I'm human, she said simply. Just human. The silence in the classroom felt heavy and strange. Hanna stood there looking calm while everyone else stared at her like she was a dangerous animal that had just shown its teeth. She walked back to her desk slowly. Her movements were smooth and controlled. Every student she passed leaned away from her. Some actually left their seats and moved to the other side of the room. Hanna tried not to let it hurt, but it did. She had come to Galactic Academy to learn, to make friends, to show that humans could fit in with the rest of the galaxy. Now everyone was afraid of her. Hanna sat down and picked up her holographic note-taker. Her hands weren't shaking. She wished they were. At least then she would feel something other than the emptiness in her chest. Dian and Jawan were still on the floor holding their wrists. The bruises were turning darker. Purple and black marks stood out against Dion's red scales and Jawan's blue crystal skin. Campus security arrived. 3 guards rushed through the door with weapons drawn. They were a species called enforcers created specifically for security work. They big, strong, and trained for combat. The lead guard looked around at the destroyed classroom. What happened here? Professor Veltha's forearms gestured at the 2 students on the floor. Dion and Juan started fighting. It escalated to violence involving multiple students. And who stopped it? The guard asked. Every single student pointed at Hanna. The guard looked at her in surprise. The small human girl sitting quietly at her desk. You stopped a fight between a Pyronian and a Cryosian? Yes, Hanna said simply. The guard didn't look like he believed her. He turned to the other students. Is this true? She caught Dion's hand mid-strike. Kyong said, his rocky voice filled with disbelief. Then she caught Juan attacking from behind without even looking. She forced them both to their knees. The second guard shifted nervously. That's not possible. Humans are classified as weak species. Low strength, fragile bone structure, minimal defensive capabilities. Your classification is wrong. Sun Wu said from where he hovered in the air. I watched her muscles. She wasn't even using her full strength. Not even close. The third guard raised his stun weapon slightly. It was pointed in Hanna's general direction, but not quite at her. His hand was shaking. Please put that away, Professor Veltha said. The situation is under control. But the nervous guard's finger slipped. The stun weapon discharged with a bright flash of blue light. The energy bolt shot across the room heading straight for Hanna. Time seemed to slow down. Every student watched the bolt fly through the air. It was set to maximum power. Enough to knock out a graniton. If it hit Hanna, it would probably kill her. Hanna's hand moved in a blur. She caught the energy bolt mid-air. It crackled and sparked in her palm, blue electricity dancing across her skin. She held it for a moment, then squeezed. The energy dissipated harmlessly, absorbed into her hand. The classroom went so quiet that everyone could hear each other breathing. Hanna looked at the guard who had fired. Her expression was mild, almost bored. You might want to recalibrate those for human physiology, she said. That tickled. The guard's weapon fell from his shaking hands. He took several steps backward, his eyes wide. Get them to medical, the lead guard said, his voice unsteady. He was pointing at Diona and G1, but his eyes never left Hanna. Everyone else, class is dismissed. The board will investigate this incident. Students practically ran for the door. They pushed and shoved to get out, some looking back at Hanna with fear in their eyes. Within minutes, the classroom was empty except for the guards, the professor, and Hanna. Miss Kim. Professor Veltha said quietly, I think you should go back to your dormitory. The board will want to speak with you soon. Hanna nodded. She gathered her things and walked toward the door. The guards moved aside quickly, making sure to stay far away from her. As she left, she heard one of them whisper, What kind of world makes something like that? The walk back to her dormitory felt longer than usual. Students who saw her coming would quickly cross to the other side of the hallway. Groups that were talking would go silent as she passed. Someone whispered Death Worlder behind her back. Hanna's room was small but comfortable. She shared it with 2 other students, but they weren't there. They were probably in class. She sat on her bed and stared at her hands. These hands had helped other students with homework, had cooked food to share with new friends, had waved hello in the mornings and goodbye in the evenings. Now everyone knew what these hands could do. Across the station, the news was spreading fast. Students were sharing videos of the fight. The footage showed everything. Hanna moving at impossible speed to save Minute G. Hanna catching both fighters at once. Hanna catching the stunned bolt like it was nothing. In the science building, a student named Boyoung was watching the video for the 5th time. Boyoung was a cerebrite, a species known for their intelligence and love of research. The video didn't make sense to him. He pulled up Earth's file in the Galactic database. The planet classification made him sit up straight. Class 12 Death World, he read aloud. High gravity, dangerous atmospheric conditions, extreme weather patterns, aggressive predator species. How is anything supposed to survive there? He kept reading. The more he learned, the more shocked he became. Earth's surface was mostly covered in a corrosive liquid that dissolved most known materials. The atmosphere had oxygen levels that would be toxic to many species. The planet experienced regular natural disasters that could wipe out entire cities. And humans had not just survived there. They had thrived. They had become the dominant species. They're apex predators, Boyung whispered. Playing nice. In the military strategy building, a student named Nari was doing her own research. Nari was a tactician, a species bred for warfare and strategy. She was reviewing human history files. What she found made her blood run cold. Humans had been fighting wars for their entire recorded history. Not just occasional conflicts, but constant continuous warfare. They had weapons that could destroy entire planets. They had created viruses that could kill billions. They had invented the concept of total war, where entire populations became targets. They weaponized everything, Nari said to her roommate. Everything. They turned atoms into bombs. They turned diseases into weapons. They even turned weather into a military tool. Her roommate, another tactician named Somone, looked over her shoulder at the screen. Are they still like this? According to this, they achieved global peace only 70 years ago, Nari said. That's nothing. That's a blink of an eye. These instincts are still fresh in them. In the biology lab, Hyun-jin was running calculations. Hyun-jin was a bioform, a species that could reshape their own bodies. He was fascinated by other species' biology. The data on human physiology was shocking. Their bone density is 40% higher than the galactic average, he told his lab partner. Their muscle fibers are incredibly efficient. They have a response system called adrenaline that temporarily increases their strength and speed when they are threatened. Temporarily increases by how much? His lab partner asked. Hyun-jin checked the numbers again. By up to 300%, and that's just average. Some humans can go even higher. That's not a survival adaptation, his lab partner said quietly. That's a weapon system. All across the station, students were learning the same terrible truth. Humans weren't the weak, fragile species they pretended to be. Humans were predators, dangerous predators, and they had been hiding in plain sight. By evening, the social changes were obvious. In the cafeteria, Hanna sat alone at a table. Other students would look at her, then quickly look away. Some pointed and whispered. Others left the cafeteria entirely when they saw her. A student named Seo-jun, who had been friendly with Hanna before, walked past her table. Hanna smiled and waved. Seo-jun saw her, froze for a moment, then quickly walked to the other side of the room. Hanna's smile faded. She looked down at her food tray. The food looked the same as always, but she couldn't taste anything. Everything felt like dust in her mouth. Her communicator buzzed. A message from her roommates. We are staying with friends tonight. Sorry. Another message from a study group. We are cancelling this week's session. We'll let you know about next week. Another from the Student Social Committee. Your application for the cultural festival has been rejected. We'll explain later. Hanna put down her communicator and pushed away her food tray. She wasn't hungry anymore. She left the cafeteria and walked through the station's common areas. Everywhere she went, she saw the same thing. Fear, distrust, isolation. She found herself in the observation deck looking out at the stars. Earth was too far away to see from here, but she knew where it was. She imagined she could see it. That small blue and green marble that had created her. I'm sorry, she whispered to the distant planet. I tried. Behind her, she heard footsteps. She turned to see Minute-jun, a small flitterling student. Flitterlings were one of the weakest species in the galaxy. Small and delicate like birds. Minute-jun hesitated, then approached her slowly. Hanna, you shouldn't be near me. Hanna said quietly. Haven't you heard? I'm dangerous. You saved Minute-ji, Minute-jun said. When that energy blast was going to hit her, you moved faster than anyone could see. You saved her life. Hanna didn't say anything. Thank you, Minute-jun said, for stopping the fight before anyone died. For 3 days had passed since the fight. Hanna had spoken to the board investigators, answered their questions, and shown them the video evidence. They concluded she had acted in self-defense and to protect others. No charges were filed, but that didn't change how the other students treated her. She walked to class alone. She ate lunch alone. Her roommates had officially requested transfers to other rooms. In the hallways, students would see her coming and quickly find reasons to go the other way. Hanna told herself it didn't matter. She came here to study, not to make friends. She could do her work, graduate, and go home. That was enough. But she was lying to herself and she knew it. On the fourth day, Hanna was walking through the station's central plaza when she heard shouting. She almost kept walking. Getting involved in other people's problems was what had caused all this trouble in the first place. But she couldn't ignore it. That wasn't who she was. She followed the sound to a quiet corridor near the engineering building. There she found Minute-Jun backed against a wall. 3 larger students surrounded him. She recognized them. Tai-Hyen, a ravager species known for being bullies, and his 2 friends. Give us your research data. Tai-Hyen was saying, the project is due tomorrow, and we are not going to fail because we are too lazy to do the work. No, Minute-Jun said, his voice shaking but firm. I worked hard on that. Do your own work. Tai-Hyen grabbed Minute-Jun's bag. Wrong answer, little bird. Other students were walking past. They saw what was happening. Some looked uncomfortable. Others just looked awe.